Hello everyone, welcome to FPL BlackBox ahead of Gameweek 8. No Mark for us today, but we've got a very able person deputising instead. It's Pras from Burning Questions on Fantasy Football Scout. How are you, Pras?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me again. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And what a week to be doing this, right? I mean, wildcard week and people with no wildcard struggling week. So yeah, lots to discuss.
It's a weird week to be doing kind of content on because obviously Mark and I did BlackBox last week and presented a load of stats and things, and obviously nothing's changed from that perspective because there's been no games, but everything's changed in the space of a week because now we've got wildcards being played. I've seen some free hits being used as well. The wildcard teams are so different, right? I mean, loads of people in the community. You know, we've had Raptor doing draft after draft. We had Janny's earlier. We're going to be presenting mine, yours, and Mark's. Like, none of us are using it this week, but if we were going to do it, all different players. This is finally the week, isn't it, where things sort of turn a bit, and we're starting to see the template shaken up.
Absolutely. And deviating strategies as well. Some people looking at 8, some people 9, some people 13, and all are very viable. So really interesting times.
Yep, absolutely. Before we get into it, let's just talk about our sponsor quickly. So we are sponsored by NordVPN this week. NordVPN are the top-rated VPN service in the world. They're the fastest VPN as well, if you're worried about that. And essentially, if you don't know what a VPN does, it's a great way of basically boosting your internet security. That's the main reason for using it. As FPL managers, we all know security is important. We don't want to get hacked. We don't want our details getting leaked, especially if you're using your kind of laptops or computers in different public areas. That's when you're kind of most at risk of all these hackers and IP address thieves and all this kind of stuff. So if you're interested in boosting your security, we've got a great deal with NordVPN. You get 4 months completely free with one of their packages. And it's 30-day completely free trial as well. So if you use it for 30 days and you don't like it for whatever reason, you can just send them an email and you get a full refund as well. Mark is using it to watch Kojak. Ever watch Kojak, Pras?
I have to say I haven't, but I do know of it, yes.
Yes, good. Well, I don't know what series he's on now, but he's going through. You can also use the VPN to take different sort of international Netflix or things and watch. You can even watch the football from different places. You can watch different places on Netflix. You can do loads of stuff with it. So do check out NordVPN if you're interested. There's links in the description below as well. A few people mentioning Manscaped. This isn't a Manscaped ad this time. Well, that was a lot of fun last week. We are selective over our sponsors. That's one thing we do promise to do. We will bring you kind of the when we get offered. We're actually getting, not to boast, but we are getting quite a few offers at the moment, but we only want to do ones that we do genuinely kind of believe in. So do check out NordVPN. As I said, links in the description below, and use the code. I think it's nordvpn.com/scout. And that's your NordVPN plan and 4 months free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Perfect. Right, let's get into it. We're going to cut out a load of the regular stuff. We're going to cut out our game weeks because obviously we've talked about that already. That was ages ago. We won't talk about the great and the good. I mean, Greyhead did an article on great and the good. I don't know if you saw it. It's a brilliant article. With it's talking about all the rises and fallers of people. I loved it. But we will skate over that, especially because I'm 3.5 minutes. Also, you're the first person on this year who actually got a decent rank at 194k. So thanks for
I was
pushing
going to say
up.
the speculation that you wanted somebody under 1 million basically on the show.
Yeah. Exactly, I know. It was Columbo, by the way, not Kojak that Mark watches. He's gonna. So I don't even know what Columbo is. He was shocked with me last time, but yeah. Anyway, right. Let's get into it. Then we are going to talk about some stats that we presented last week. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about kind of our teams and plans and what because the things we're thinking of doing are going to be a lot of the things of what other people are doing. But here's the season schedule kind of as it is at the moment. So the title of this black box is called 7 Up. That's because there's 7 fixtures to go through. Brighton, Chelsea, Palace, Leeds, Liverpool, Manchester United, none of which have a fixture this week. So there's only sort of these kind of 14 teams to target. Then it's the international break. So then we've got another 2 weeks of nothing. And then we're straight back into game week 9. And then it's the Champions League kicking off again at the end of that, and the Europa League as well. 2 more rounds of that going on. So you've got to think this is going to be a really busy time. And we learned today as well that in game week 12, Arsenal and Manchester City, 2 teams who are going to have a lot of investment in their players, don't have a game either. So yeah, let's talk about the kind of let's talk about Arsenal and City first then, because that's the kind of the newest thing that we know. Does that change any of your plans going forward about which players you would be looking to bring in? Does it make you more likely to want to sell Arsenal players, for example?
Yeah, so I can see. I mean, Arsenal already were embarking on a tough run, right? I mean, if they've lost Man City, that doesn't change much because we weren't expecting a lot from their assets against City anyway. So I think people were looking on a wild card to sort of dial down their Arsenal coverage. I don't think many will have an Arsenal defender going forward after this game week. Many will actually get off Jesus unless they don't have a wild card or something. So I think people will sort of come down to a Martinelli. And even that, for example, I'm looking at a wildcard next week and I'm thinking, do I really want Martinelli, who's playing Liverpool and then is blanking, and I'll have to deal with all of that? Maybe not have Martinelli either. So
Yeah.
I think it makes it very interesting in terms of people you target. With City, it's even more tricky because you sort of want to target City this week. Good fixture, captainable fixture. De Bruyne is like the standout premium. But again, the blank doesn't help. And how do you sort of work around that?
Well, that's the big thing, isn't it? Like, a lot of people are jumping off the Arsenal assets, like you mentioned. I mean, none of them have really done anything wrong. I mean, the defence has been a little bit disappointing, especially Ramsdale. But, Saliba, for example, has been good. I've had Gabriel, who's been a bit rubbish. Zinchenko's obviously had the injury and things. But, I don't know, their defensive numbers we're going to talk about are still really good. But anyway, a lot of people are jumping off the defence. But then, I mean, in midfield, I mean, Saka's just scored. Martinelli's been doing well all season. Jesus has been unlucky. He got the one big haul and could have had more. And yet they're being sold in their kind of droves. And it's City that are being picked up on. Most wildcard drafts I'm seeing have Cancelo now, for example. Yeah. A lot of people move from Salah to De Bruyne. I've got Foden in my side. Everyone's got Haaland. So they're two kind of quite contrasting sides and two of the best sides in the league at the moment.
Yeah. I think with City, it's a little different in the sense that you back them even for a Liverpool fixture. And number two, it's the price point, right? Because one thing that's happening this week is people are jumping off Liverpool because of the blank, obviously. And so people are thinking De Bruyne is my replacement for Salah eventually, or I'll hop off him. Maybe I'll go Cancelo to Trent. And basically that is a parallel that people can look at and then say, I can move my City assets that way. But I do agree, if you're not on a wild card, for example, you have to sort of balance things out. It's really tricky because you want Liverpool in 12, but you don't want them now. You want City now, but you don't want them in 12. And how do you actually navigate it?
It's a really tricky week to wildcard, isn't it? And it was when I did Gianni's video earlier, and I was looking at his wildcard team, I kind of looked at it and I thought it was a bit meh. There's nothing in it that really kind of got me too excited. But that's because a lot of these teams, like I look at Chelsea, I look at Palace, I look at Leeds, I look at Man United, they're the teams with the quite exciting players, like Sinistera for Leeds, you've got Rashford, for Man United, you've got Chelsea with Potter in, Sterling maybe, James, Palace with Zaha, but you can't load up on those teams because obviously you've got to get a team out that's got games this week.
It's heading into a blank. A wildcard usually doesn't make sense, but in this one, I would, when we'll come to wildcard drafts, I think there is a way around it because there are players who may not have the best fixture this week, but have a fantastic run coming up. I mean, your boy Maddison, Bowen, these guys don't have the best stats. We'll come to them, but they are essentially players that you could potentially work the blank around, but also have on a wildcard. And I think people should look at that and say, my wildcard team is not for just one game week, it's for all the game weeks in the future. And how can I calibrate that? And there are some tricky spots, but I think you can get to a team that sort of works, I think.
I made a joke the other day that Potter was going to play Sterling at left wing back. It actually looks like he is tonight.
Is he really? I mean, the chat will have to tell us how they're playing. I have no idea how Potter's playing this game.
No, keep us updated in the chat because it'd be really interesting to know and how long it takes for Haaland to score against his old club as well. Yeah, do keep us updated. Speaking of like fixtures, like you mentioned, this is kind of the important thing to be looking at now. Over at Fanciful Scout, obviously we've got the fixture ticker, which you can sort by difficulty. Fulham leaping right to the top over the next 6. Forest away in Gameweek 8, Newcastle, West Ham, Bournemouth, Villa, Leeds. Amazing run of fixtures for them. Mitrovic, he's got to be a lock-in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the 3 forward formation and essentially Haaland and Mitrovic taking the 2 until the World Cup, I think is going to be just locked.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, we're going to talk about some of the other forwards as well that people are going for, because obviously we've got this big pool of forwards now with, Jesus, Haaland, Mitrovic, Tony, Isak's being mentioned, quite a few people. Kane's coming into the reckoning now. So yeah, like Mark and I have talked about, you've gone from no one last year, like what, 2 forwards, or people wanting to sell a forward spot to have another midfielder, and now it's just completely turned around. It's very weird. It's a crazy season. I mean, we're going to get onto the craziest thing in just a second. I mean, Leicester are next in second. They got Spurs away, obviously tough, but then Forest, Bournemouth, Palace, Leeds, Wolves. So that's why you mentioned Maddison, for example. Would you consider anyone else from them? Defence, Vardy, or is it just Maddison?
Just Maddison, maybe at a stretch Barnes, if he looks a little bit, on it against Spurs, because Barnes is a little bit in and out in the team, so you could sort of punt, but I would say in addition to Maddison, not instead of. And then the other one is Iheanacho. If he starts again, if he does well, and if you're looking like Vardy's not starting, it's going to be tricky. But those are areas where you punt, and maybe James Justin. So these would be the 4 I would look at.
Do you think they can turn it around under Rodgers?
No.
I know.
I mean, I'm actually semi-hoping or expecting that he gets the sack over the international break, and you get a manager. Ward and Iverson can become a thing again, or Justin can become a thing again, or you can back Maddison a little bit more. The team's not heading anywhere. Last season they got away because they had Europe, and people said, okay, they're progressing in Europe, so league form is poor. That's fine. This season they're just not heading anywhere. They don't have that European distraction yet. Their numbers are poor. They used to be good in attack. That's also not sort of panning out. And it's not just fixtures. It's just the team is looking really poor.
Yeah, it's a really strange one, isn't it? Because, I mean, towards the back end of last season, when they got knocked out of Europe, they started to look a lot better. They had their team fit. They were scoring goals. And there was no real excuse for them at the start of this season. I know they didn't buy anyone, but they still had what I thought was a strong core of kind of key players. And just couldn't get going. I mean, they had all the Fofana thing going on. I think quite a few of their players were unsettled. Maddison was being linked with a move away. For example, Tielemans as well. And the kind of spine of the squad. Schmeichel leaving was absolutely huge for the defence. So, yeah, I think I overestimated them definitely, but I didn't expect them to be as bad as they have been. And I'll show some stats on them in just a second. Villa, though. Villa's the interesting one that I wanted to mention. I am seeing people with Dean in their wildcard teams. What are you doing? If you've got Dean in your wildcard team, get him out.
I tell you what, the dilemma right now for every wildcarder is a third defender. Everyone has Trippier, everyone has Cancelo, and they are trying to work out who plays this week and has good fixtures later. It's not James, it's not Trent, so people are basically scraping down the barrel to look for a defender that plays. And so people are going Emerson, perhaps. They're looking at a second Newcastle defender, or even a third if you include Pope. It's difficult. It's difficult to basically look for that spot. Maybe Perisic. So Dean is as good as any other option. I know there is trauma associated with that pick, both for yourself and for every one of us from last season. But look, I think it's a good fixture if you wanted to sort of have a 1 week or a 2-3 week fling. But I hear you. I mean, Villa, again, another side which is not looking great, and you just don't know where they're heading.
Yep. And then some of the other sides, and we've got Bournemouth in 4th. Not a huge amount of options from there. Solanke, maybe, but again, I've listed those 5 forwards, and it's hard to find a place for a Bournemouth striker when you've got all the others. And then West Ham, and we're going to talk about West Ham a bit more. They've been really poor start of this season. Bowen is starting to attract a lot of interest. He's proper, ignore all the stats and just focus on fixtures, because he hasn't got the stats, but popular. But yeah, West Ham, now being invested in. And then down the bottom, it's all the main guys, really. I mean, you've got Chelsea, Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, United, and then Brighton right down the bottom. So, from the start of the season, when we had all these top teams with great fixtures, that's completely turned around now, which is why we're seeing such an exodus of Liverpool players and Arsenal players and everything. But Brighton is a strange one, isn't it? Because, they were flying so high and there was so many options, it seemed, in their team, and now it's just not the case.
I feel sorry for Brighton fans, I mean, like yourself and the team. I mean, I hope it works out with the new manager, but it's basically like you were on a good thing. I mean, if you had a good season, anything could have been possible. Top 6, I mean, the team was looking superb. They had a system. The players were working in the system. It was Potter's 4th year. It's sad to see. But yeah, I think from a fantasy perspective anyway, after the blank, they play Liverpool and Spurs, and then later I think they play Man City as well. So I think for now, until the World Cup, it's see you later.
Yep, it's time to hop off the likes of Gross and Trossard, which is a shame because I mean, you know, before all the postponements, I mean, Brighton were about to go into a game against Bournemouth, and then we would have seen, you know, kind of what we were capable of in that. You know, then Palace gets called off, but that was still 2 more games we thought we could get from, you know, a lot of our Brighton assets. And, you know, I've got 2 in my side. Some people even had 3. But, you know, with Sanchez as well, if he was your only goalkeeper, you're going to have to make a move for him. So, yeah, one of the worst teams to be affected by, well, probably the worst team to be affected by everything that's going on. You know, 2 cancellations, and a manager loss, and tough fixtures to come after the international break.
And the train strikes getting called off to really rub it in the first place.
I know, yeah, it's been an absolute nightmare. Let's take a look. We presented this data kind of last week, so we won't go into loads of detail about it because obviously nothing has changed, but obviously it's good to get your opinion kind of on things. So this is the team data attack so far this season. Top 3 sides, Man City, Arsenal and Liverpool. Interestingly enough, Liverpool have regressed based on last season, but are still really high up on the attacking stats. So an XG non-penalty per 90 of 1.94, so still expected to score 2 goals every game they play. That's down from 2.44 last season. City dropping, which is interesting, even though they've added Haaland, down to 2.19 from 2.47. What do you make of Liverpool, though? I mean, obviously the fixtures that I just showed are rough. They got a blank, and then it's Brighton, which arguably now might be a better fixture. But then it's Arsenal and Man City. The attack's been struggling. They did get the result against Ajax, kind of right at the death yesterday. But this is the big turning point, I think, because we're seeing people now selling 3 Liverpool players. Diaz, Salah, Trent, so popular, all going. What do you make of that?
Yeah, look, I guess they're doing it because they're forced to do it in a sense, and I say that because we're on the back of the Brighton discussion. People had 2-3 Brighton, 3 Liverpool, Arsenal's fixtures are turning, Chelsea. People were forced to wildcard. I mean, if you don't have those and you're okay, then great. I mean, you've sort of been on the right side of it, but I think people have been forced to wildcard. And now that you are wildcarding, you're thinking, do I really want a Salah and want to bench him rather than playing a De Bruyne this week? Do I really want a Trent? So some people may consider that, but my personal view on Liverpool is we're sort of using the last 2 weeks to judge them when Thiago was out, Matip was out. I mean, if you look at yesterday's Ajax game, they put up 2.2 XG. Salah put up 0.9 XG. So look, he was XGI. They are coming back. I don't think they're completely back, but they have tough fixtures. So I can understand people having a view of saying, I can just avoid these guys until they've played Man City, which is game week 11, and then I'll just hop on them game week 12. Completely understandable. But then there's people like myself who are not wildcarding this week, or yourself who may actually take the view that, look, if I can get through this week, then I have a differential Salah and a differential Trent playing Brighton at home. You have Arsenal, which usually can have goals, so it's not really the end of the world. So really, it's just Man City. Apart from that, until the World Cup, I like Liverpool, but then you need to really have faith that this team is going to get back to what we've seen, because if they're not delivering a 2+ XG per game, then you're not paying 13 million. And then the second element to that is Haaland, right? Haaland's broken the game. Everyone's captaining Haaland every week. So then you question, if Diaz is going to score 80% of Salah's points, then why should I pay 13 million and not 8 million?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the key thing. I mean, if we come back to the fixtures quickly, I mean, Liverpool with Brighton in game week 9, City have Man United at home, which I mean you could argue is a tougher fixture, especially now given that United have seemed to have improved defensively. But would you still back against Haaland in that? I think if I had Haaland and Salah, I'd still go for Haaland in that. Would you?
Yes, but you also have Mitrovic playing Bournemouth at home. So that's also a consideration if you wanted to sort of... So you have an alternative. You don't have to have...
No, Mitrovic has got Newcastle.
Sorry, which week are you referring to?
Game week 9.
Oh, game week 9. Yeah, fair. I mean, you could argue that Salah could be a differential, but no, I would still pick Haaland. I thought you were talking about game week 12 when they play each other.
Yeah.
Or game week 11.
Game week 11, yeah. Yeah, game week 11, Liverpool and City play each other, which is... potential to go a bit different. So yeah, as you said, Mitrovic has got Bournemouth. If you've got Kane, or if you've gone for Kane, you've got Everton at home, which is why I really like the look of Kane, because I'm looking, and we're going to talk about the world captains in a bit, but I'm looking at Kane in game week 8 and game week 11. Haaland's got Wolves away, and then he's got Liverpool. I think I'd back Kane in both of those fixtures over Haaland, and it's going to be pretty rare, I think, in the long term, just know when I'm going to be able to do that.
Yeah, fair. Look, This week, I would doubt it, given how Spurs looked last night. I mean, they're looking a little bit toothless. Now, they're home to Leicester. That doesn't get any better than
No.
that. But if you ask me now, gut feel, if I had Kane and Haaland, I think I'm still picking Haaland, depending on, if he gets 90 minutes or not, because City are playing tonight and then they play the early kickoff on Saturday. So that's not ideal. I think Haaland still starts. But I still back Haaland this week. But I do get that game week 11 is going to be one where people need to sort of plan around it.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to talk about wildcard drafts in a bit. Just as a spoiler, though, would you, if you were playing a wildcard this week, would you have a route back to Salah?
Yes. And you'll see that in my draft. I've actually left money to upgrade KDB to Salah anytime.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because I think a lot of people who are spending all their money around, they're not going to have a route. They might have a route back to Diaz, right? Because you're probably going for a Bowen or a Saka. And so that 8 million spot is kind of set. But a Trent, where you're going to find, 1.5 or 2 million to upgrade Trippier to Trent, for example. And, maybe you could do Cancelo, but you're probably going to want to keep him as well. Where are you going to find that extra million to do De Bruyne? Or if, like me, you're going for Kane, how are you going to get back to Salah without having to majorly kind of reconstruct your team? So it feels like it is if you're not leaving the money in, you are pretty much saying you're going to go without Salah for at least, 5 weeks and maybe reassess around game week 12 when they play West Ham at home. It's a scary thought given to where we were at the start of the season. He was just a complete... if you didn't have Salah in your team at the start of the season, like Mark was ridiculed for not having Salah. And he was right about it. I mean, none of the other players he bought in did anything, and that's a shame. But he was right about Salah. So Salah's got to completely turn it around over a difficult run of fixtures for people to be bringing him back.
Yeah, I hear you. Look, I think the Salah thing, we are playing against other people. And so the whole thing with Salah was we didn't know Haaland would be perma-captain material. Again, I'm not jumping to conclusions. This may change in a few weeks. But at the moment, we are in a place where Haaland can be captain pretty much every week. And then you have to add that Salah is now probably 40% owned, 30% owned. That's not the same as 180% EO, which he had at the beginning of the season. So I think the thinking process is slightly different. I know if we were to think of it completely like numbers, then it shouldn't matter. You should sort of pick the player that is, that you expect to score the most points. But that's not really how it works. As a human, you sort of think of this player as the most owned. I'm sort of hesitant to go against them. So that doesn't apply to Salah anymore. My only logic with Salah is that we're in a state where money is not a problem. Like, if you were saying that the wingbacks were all 9 million and then you couldn't really afford them, and so why do you have Salah in the first place? I think you can have a great team with Salah and Haaland. So you don't really need to say, if I'm not captaining Salah, why should I go for Salah? So I think the logic applies to a Kane or a KDB, but having a second premium somewhat gets you in a position that you're not really restructuring. Because I have to say, going Kane is not a problem because Kane and Bowen to, let's say, Salah and somebody is easily possible. So it doesn't mean, unless you have money left in the blank, even upgrading a KDB to a Salah takes 2 moves, right? It can't be done in 1 move. So I don't think you should worry that much if you're on a Kane that you're so far away from a Salah.
Yeah, it's true. It's interesting as well you mentioned about, have money not being a problem. And when you take out Salah and Trent, it's the classic thing. It's amazing what you can do with that. And, people have debated doing that when Liverpool have had okay fixtures and been playing well just because they want to spread the money around and try and boost the rest of their team. But at this point, it actually feels like it might be the most sensible time to try that and to do it because their prices haven't. It's not like Trent's gone up to 8 million. It's not like Salah's gone up to 13.5. You can pretty much buy them back for what they started at. And there's other good assets, other good premium assets with good fixtures. So yeah, I get the logic. I can see why people are doing it. I do wonder if in 3 weeks' time people are going to be like, oh crap, what have I done? I need to get my Liverpool players back. Coming back to team attack then. Obviously, we've got Leeds in 4th. They've had a strong start to the season, but no game. Spurs up in 5th. They have regressed in a bit in terms of XG non-penalty per 90, down from 1.69 to 1.58, but nothing to kind of, be too worried about. One of the biggest improvements in non-penalty XG per 90 is Newcastle. They're up in 7th. They've gone from 1.11 to 1.52. Isak's there now. I've seen him in quite a few wildcard drafts. What do you make of Isak? Because Wilson is going to be back, presumably, at some point. You know what he's like. He's probably get injured again straight away. But Do you think that means Isak moves out wide? Do you reckon he tries to accommodate them both in a 2 up top?
I think he'll try to play them together because I mean they've paid a lot of money for him. They have him as an insurance when Wilson is injured, but I don't see him sort of dropping out. I mean, you could argue that his production would be lower if Wilson starts because Wilson is the greedier of the two, at least based on very small samples. But he looks like the guy who'll hang around the goal, and Isak could take a bit. He could move left, or he could be the support striker. We will see. We don't know that yet. What we do know is Isak plays one of the tastiest fixtures this game week, so I can see Wildcarders going there.
Yeah.
Bournemouth at home is as good as it gets, and it's an attack that is improving.
Yeah, and if you're backing on a team for a clean sheet this week, it has to be Newcastle at home to Bournemouth. Bournemouth are the worst attack in the league by a considerable margin. XG non-penalty per 90 of 0.42. That puts them 20th, just below Aston Villa, 0.86. So, they're expected to score less than a goal every other game, which is, terrible. Newcastle are so strong at home, kind of, as we know. Some of the drop-offs, West Ham are worth noting. They're 17th over the season so far. Really slow start for them. An XG non-penalty per 90 of 1.47 last season. That's dropped to 0.96. So less than a goal expected every game. Paqueta's in now. Bowen's back on penalties. Skamaka, is he back now? He's kind of was in for a bit. Is he back from injury? Do you think this is the time they start improving?
I think fixtures will bring form, right? I mean, people are sort of punting on Bowen or Paqueta because of the fact that they have pedigree. Paqueta has great numbers in his time in France, and Bowen, we know what he did last season, right? And he's apparently also on penalties given Europa League evidence. So people are sort of buying into the fixtures, but I think so far they have absolutely disappointed. I mean, it's not the start that we expected from them, and it's not Europa League. Like, you could have sort of blamed it on midweek games and tiredness, but that's not the case either. So it hasn't clicked, but Bowen is playing, I think, just behind the striker. So he is advanced enough that things could change, but we haven't seen that yet. They've had semi-tough fixtures so that people didn't go there. I mean, they have played Man City and I think one other top 4 team. So, look, things should change. And if you wanted to go for a Bowen punt, you'll see in my wildcard draft, it's something we've done. Because you're, again, calibrating. Game in game week 8, good fixtures after that, and that sort of fits the bill.
Yep, very good. Defence-wise... So City are top by loads, not really surprising. Interesting, their attack has got worse with Haaland from last year. I say worse, obviously we're only dealing with kind of small numbers here. But their defence has improved, even though Laporte's been out and they've been kind of rotating with Stones and Diaz and whoever else comes in. But 0.59 XG non-penalty per 90 is the highest. Arsenal are in second, even though they've been conceding quite a few scrappy goals. The underlying stats point to a big defensive improvement, up from 1.29 last season. And there's improvements for Spurs. And interesting, West Ham come in at 4th. So even though they've had this slow start to their attack and they haven't been going too well, defensively, they've looked pretty good. And Emerson is the one that I'm seeing in a lot of drafts. That feels like a trap, doesn't it?
It's the Cresswell situation, and we just don't know what happens. I mean, there is some talk with fans that Emerson is the better wing back, so he should keep his place. But with these things, I always go back to Bailey, right? I mean, one bad performance and they miss out, or the week that you really need them, they miss out. And the other thing with West Ham is, again, a little bit of a nuanced long-term point, but basically the week where you need your bench, it will be the week that Man City blank, which is your game week 12 against Arsenal, right? Because you'll probably bench Haaland or Cancelo or Martinelli. Emerson then has a tough fixture against Liverpool that same week. So he's not going to be the reliable bench fodder that you need when you actually really need him. So that's my issue with Emerson.
Yeah, absolutely. Liverpool are in 5th. Not a huge drop-off from where they were last season. So they're still kind of, 3rd in the attack data over the season so far. They're 5th in defensive data, and the data isn't that much different from last season. And they're going to get better, right? We're not expecting what we've seen over the last few Premier League games from Liverpool to continue. We are expecting a kind of improvement from them over the international break. Players are back. You mentioned Thiago and things. So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see the people that have sold the players versus the ones that end up keeping them, just to see kind of where that goes. Let's talk about some players in a bit more detail. We will cover just some of the players that are playing this week. Let's talk keepers first of all. Pope, easiest choice ever on a wildcard. Top of the goalkeeper stats, 6 points per game. hoovering up bonus, great XG prevented. Easy?
It's hard to go against him this week. When I'll wildcard next week, I'll make a case for Guaita if I can, just because of fixtures. I mean, until the World Cup, their fixtures are unreal. Apart from Chelsea in the first game week, actually, which is game week 9. But apart from him, I don't see anybody else. So, Pope, great option. And I think when he starts to become 5.2, 5.3, then you start to question, is he Edison good or is he Allison good? But apart from that, I think nothing wrong with him.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Guaita. He's got one of the worst expected goal prevented so far of keepers. Only Travers 6.4, minus 6.4. Terrible. And of course, Danny Ward, minus 3.5 as well. But it's interesting with Guaita because obviously defensive stats have them as rock bottom this season in terms of the amount of chances they're allowing. Guaita's not really been in form. They've looked good, I thought, Palace, for in a lot of games, 2-0 up against City, for example, but they are struggling to keep shots away and Guaita's struggling to save them. So again, that's kind of similar to Bowen, right? That's where you've got to look at the fixtures and hope that you can predict a kind of a change in things. But yeah, if I was wildcarding now, I think Pope is pretty much locked on. What do you think about a kind of a rotating goalkeeper pairing? I mean, Sanchez and Raya, for example, that would be the same as like a Pope and a Ward. Would that be something that would tempt you, or would you just go for the one?
Over the years, I've just always been burnt because keepers get their points in the difficult games where they've kept an unexpected clean sheet and had 9 saves and you have a 15-pointer, and in the easy games they get a clean sheet, 6 points or nothing. So I just I don't hate it if somebody comes up with a great rotation, especially now that Pope is 5.2 million. So you could argue that 2 4.5s are good enough, but I just I'm not a fan. There's so many good keepers at 5 million this year. I mean, Mendy is all right. If he gets fit, Ramsdale is fine. Then you have the Reyes and stuff. So look, I don't think you need to rotate. You just put somebody in. It's until the World Cup anyway. Pope or Guaita, Raya, I think just have one of those and that's fine.
Yeah, I think you're always looking for kind of three things with a goalkeeper. It's, do they defend well? Does the team defend well as a thing? Are they likely to get spanked kind of 8-0, or are they likely to keep like 1-0 to 2-0? Well, Pope checks that box. Does he make a lot of saves? Well, he's made the joint most saves in the league, so that's an extra wave for points. Does he do well on the baseline bonus? It's Nick Pope. He always does well on the baseline bonus because he makes loads of recoveries. I think he's made the most recoveries in the league as well, and the most saves. He's playing for a good defensive side, and we've seen from the fixture ticker there's good fixtures as well. So I just don't really know why you would go elsewhere. I mean, I've got Henderson, who I think's okay. He's a bit cheaper. He's got good baseline bonus. He's making a lot of saves, but he hasn't got that stability that Newcastle have to actually keep teams out. If Forest keep a clean sheet, that's going to be a rare thing to happen.
Here's the first test, basically, which is
keep clean sheets. Yeah, so I think Pope for me is the one that I'll go for. Defenders. Let's take a look at these. So, some of the players that we're kind of looking at. I mean, Trippier is being bought by a lot of people. A points per 90 of 5 is ranks highly amongst defenders. Chance created per 90, 1.83. That puts him in the top 10 of all defenders as well. He scored the 1 goal, the free kick, so we know he's got the set pieces. I think he's up to 5.2 now, is he? Or is he up to 5.2? Yeah. I mean, he's in pretty much every wildcard team I'm seeing. It's hard to overlook him, isn't it? I think he's heading towards 30% ownership as well.
He will be very well owned. I mean, even people not on wildcard will be heading for him because there is just an opportunity. And the thing is, he has essentially monopoly of the set pieces, especially the free kicks, some corners, and as they play easier games, they will be more further up the pitch, more free kicks, more corners. He's just going to be in the bonus, potentially getting. He is the guy who we hoped sort of James would be or Trent would be, and hope he can deliver.
38% ownership. So he's obviously got a lot of new owners kind of over the last week. It's amazing. I mean, more and more people, you can tell within FPL, more and more people are engaged, right? Because someone like Trippier is quite an obvious pick that we'd say, but a few years ago, he wouldn't have grown with the level of ownership that he has now. And it just shows that the level of engagement is much higher. I mean, I'm looking at the defenders and I'm struggling to find anyone that exciting that I would bring in. I mean, the 3 defenders that I would pick, who I'll talk about in my wildcard, are just, I think, quite simple ones to go for. Is there anyone that you like? I mean, not just for this week, but kind of going forward. Do you think about Perisic, for example? He's up there, right up there, as he always will be this season. But I don't know. I got off him.
He's disappointed on XG, so he's not been as threatening as one would have thought. And his relationship with Son, I mean, my boy Andy on Burning Questions, he's a big Son fan, as people know. He's quite frustrated with the way Perisic plays, and he sort of takes away Son's role a lot. He bypasses him, crosses the ball, so Son is almost moving out. Is not involved in the play as much, and then he gets frustrated and he's breaking up the play. So therefore, Son is getting much more impacted when Perisic plays. And if Perisic isn't going to be delivering the same returns as a James or a Trent or even a Trippier that we expect, he's already an X minutes risk. So then you're sort of thinking, do I really want to go there unless it's a short-term punt? That's the issue, I think, with Perisic. Otherwise, if you look at the stats table, you have a Spurs left wing back as a superb asset, because you see Sessegnon here as well on a per 90 basis, and you see Perisic here. So if they morphed into one player that played every week, then you get in Alonso, and then they're the best player in the game. But we don't have that, so therefore I think Spurs are a little out. Robertson has disappointed. He's obviously injured now till the end of the international break. I don't know what's happened. Tsimikas looked beautiful, by the way, yesterday against Ajax. Not that he'll take Robertson's place, but he'll continue to be that threat which will eat up minutes from Robertson. So that's sort of out. People are taking Trent out right now, and we don't know if that sort of how quickly they bring him back. So, yeah, we've gone from having 7-8 defenders game week 1 to basically having 3 now. And this is how FPL changes very quickly.
I think you make a great point about Perisic there, because Perisic's points per 90 of 7.98 is the second highest amongst all defenders. So Chilwell is 15.97, I think, which is absolutely crazy. It's what like he was last season. Whenever he plays, he seems to deliver huge hauls, but you never really know when it's gonna come. But I mean, look at Perisic's shot per 90, 0.32. Now that is one of the lowest of all the defenders in the league. Chances created is one of the highest, 2.55. So open play crosses is one of the highest, exactly like you say. But that's not why we bought Perisic at the start of the season. We bought Perisic because we thought he was going to be smashing up the central areas, taking loads of shots. And really, that XGI non-penalty per 90 needs to be double what it is at 0.34. I want to see that at 0.6, 0.7 before I think that's going to be worth running that kind of rotation risk with Sessegnon.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So it's not for me. I completely agree. Anyone else on this list that you like the look of?
In terms of defenders, no. I think there will be some popular picks at this sub 5 million bracket. Just who you go for is completely dependent on the team, the time of the when you're wildcarding. So people will look at Fofana. Now I know Fofana isn't starting tonight, but he could be a potential budget gem at 4.4. People are looking at Dalot. He's got great attacking numbers playing for Man United, even with tougher fixtures. Easily somebody you can rotate. And then you have sort of Guehi, Palace again coming back to the great fixtures. He's, I think, 4.4, 4.3. So there are lots of options in the 4.5 million. Botman is 4.4. So, you could go there to sort of put some budget in midfield, which I think there will be a need for when we come to the midfielders.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to the XGI non-penalty per 90, the defenders like Mark and I talked about last week, Estupinan's at the highest, 0.46, was only started 2 games. And then it drops off to the 0.3 mark. Whereas, last season we had Trent sort of like 0.6 with James, around that as well. We had defenders, premium defenders, much higher in terms of attacking potential as well. And we kind of need that if we're going to be spending this much money on them, because, like you mentioned, when you come to the midfielders, so many options really that are beating those kind of attacking, kind of instincts with them. I mean, De Bruyne is at the top of the list, 0.79. He's the kind of the really popular asset. That's where a lot of Salah owners are going to. Salah's down at 0.68, which is still high, like elite numbers for someone like him. I'm going to ask you about is your laptop running out of battery?
Sorry. Yeah.
Classic. Is that
because I switched laptops before we started?
When I was doing the Scoutcast years ago, I think it was like my 3rd stream. Exactly the same thing. I was on my laptop, and then the little no power sign came on, and so I literally took my laptop and ran down the stairs and plugged it in. And of course, everyone saw me panicked and then running down it. I think it got made into a GIF or something. But I know the panic. And then I think Yeah, like
1%
1%.
back.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and same thing happened to Eggerstoff, Jay Eggerstoff. He gave a whole
Yes, I
tour of
remember
his
that.
house. That was the best one. That was a full tour of his house. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, so De Bruyne top of the list. I started the season with him. I thought he could match Haaland at least initially at the starts. I feel a bit unlucky when I look at these kind of numbers and think, this is an XGI non-penalty per 90 of 0.79 for De Bruyne. That's got to be the highest it's ever been for him in the league. But then he has a game like that Palace game where he plays a lot deeper, and it's just really frustrating.
It's the role, yeah, and look. I mean, we saw with the City numbers that they are slightly down, and it's the fact that for the first time that we remember since Aguero that they have a talisman. He is hogging up most of the goals, so he's creating the chances, but he'll always be the guy. So it's sort of, I feel like he'll be a great pick, but he'll never be the Haaland pick. So you're sort of, do you want to diversify your premium, or do you want to sort of put both the eggs in the same basket? That's my issue with De Bruyne. But I think as a second premium, he's put his hand up. He's definitely up there. Better underlyings than Salah, but than Kane. So why not?
Yep. I mean, look at someone like Diaz, for example. I mean, Diaz at 0.37. That is so low. Mount, 0.25. Where's he been? But look at Bowen in 69th, 0.21. That is, he's not in the top 10 for any, shot per 90, chance created, points. He's got no goals, no assists all season. I mean, I know we thought 8.5 was probably a bit too much for him, but I would have expected something from him by now.
Yeah. He's been the surprise, because you would have thought he would have kicked on from an almost 200-point season. I mean, that's not a coincidence if you have an almost 200-point season. So to go from there to now having penalties, we think, but not being as effective. I mean, I don't know if there's something in David Moyes' play this season that we're going to be more defensively solid, because he was known for that years past at Everton, Man United. But they were attacking. I don't know what's happened. Maybe it's a fixtures play. So I do see people going there purely punty, not based on any underlyings, just going, look, we'll see. It should turn around.
Yeah, I mean, my rule with players like Bowen is I want to see something from them just to start that kind of, particularly earlier in the season. Because if you get in Bowen, okay, he's easy to move on to a Diaz, but you're not going to want to, because he's always going to have good fixtures. But if he continues to disappoint, gets early subs or whatever, and his price drops even more, you're losing money on him, you're not transferring out because of the fixtures. That's the kind of play I've ended up being stuck with kind of in the past. So for me, I know the fixtures are good, but there just isn't enough there to make me think that it's suddenly all going to turn around for him.
Yeah.
And Seb was talking on the Scoutcast about Paqueta at 6 million. And I actually think he's a nicer punt for people that are looking to tap into West Ham, because he's cheaper, and he's not struggling at the start of the season. He's going to come into the team, and paid £50 million for him. League One, Foreign Player of the Year last season, beating Messi and Neymar as well. So he's being sniffed around by a lot of teams as well. So they both feel really punty, but in that kind of situation, I think I'd be tempted to go with the cheaper one. Obviously not on this list yet.
Maybe. I mean, if you wanted to spin the narrative, you could say Paqueta would make Bowen a better asset. But again,
True.
The issue is,
Yep.
the issue I go back to is this game week 12 blank, which is Man City and Arsenal. And you want a player that you can play then and not be a problem then. And again, West Ham play Liverpool. So whether you have Paqueta or Bowen, if you have Bowen, you'll probably have to sort of shift him out to a Zaha or somebody else. So it's like a very short-term punt, and then you go to a Zaha. Paqueta maybe is benchable, but then you want to bench other City and Arsenal players as well. So that's where I'm a little stuck, and I can see that in Game Week 8 wildcards, people could go for Bowen. Game Week 9 wildcard, people will just say, okay, I don't want to go there, I'll just go Zaha straight.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what I think as well.
Zaha's numbers look good, right? I mean, in your table, which you've just passed, but Zaha is sort of outperforming our big guns. I mean, he's outperforming Martinelli, Foden. Those are very, very good numbers. Rashford, who everyone's saying is looking attacking. So I think he is being sort of ignored, but I feel like Zaha will be a pick that will be very heavily owned by game week 10.
Yeah, he still feels like he's going under the radar, Zaha. I mean, he's got 4 goals this season, which is the joint most of all midfielders, along with McAllister somehow. Never would have predicted that, obviously. Oh no, Madison's got on that starts. There's only McAllister. There's one other who's got 4 as well. Rodrigo, obviously, who then got injured, and then it's Zaha. Zaha's in the top 10 for shots per 90, having loads of those shots in the box as well. His chances created is decent. 6.33 points a game. I mean, for 7 million, he's a good pick, isn't he? I think.
Right.
The other player I like, and every year I get obsessed with a certain player, and I have to end up just bringing them in because I get so annoyed when they score and I haven't got them. But that's Sinistera in second. I just think he's great. I mean, XG non-penalty per 90 of 0.7. That's second highest in the league. Only 2 starts, but 2 goals in those 2 starts. Keeps getting subbed off early, but you think he was injured and now he's going to have a long old rest before international break. Fixtures are decent for Leeds. I want him.
Fair enough. I mean, in that price bracket, you have Pras, you have maybe Gibbs White, but these are all, I mean, fair, steady Eddie players.
Yeah.
Sounds a little bit more exciting, but then fixtures are okay, not the best. You could sort of say Southampton have slightly better fixtures, but there's not much in it. I think Sinister is a fine pick. Obviously Seb and others will have a better opinion on his minutes. It's annoying to have him being subbed off, but he does feel like the Rafinha replacement that they wanted, right? And this was why people were talking other people off Rodrigo in the first place, because you have Aronson, you have Sinistera, you have Harrison and Bamford. I mean, that's the 4 that they want attacking, and if he's part of that, he should be in and amongst the goals.
Yeah, I mean, for me, around 6.5, I think it's still Martinelli probably the standout because of the way he's started the season. But then I think it's Sinistera for me. I mean, you've got Rashford at 6.5. What do you make of that? Do you think he keeps his place longer term with Martial there?
Yeah, so Martial will always be a threat because Anthony and Sancho will be the excuse me, the guys who flank. So he can keep doing well and keep his place, but he's one bad game away from Martial playing or Ronaldo playing, and that's the issue. So you need sort of a injured Martial to be comfortable holding a Rashford.
Yeah, no, I agree. Absolutely. Looking at 8 million mids then, this is just a kind of a side-by-side comparison. This is one of the decisions that a lot of people are making. I just stuck Saka, Bowen and Maddison in there. Obviously Diaz is around as well, but hasn't got the game this week. But I mean, if you're picking an 8 million midfielder based on stats, you have to pick Saka because he is winning on every category. Shots in the box, big chances created, touches in the box, crosses, baseline bonus, XG non-penalty, minutes per point. He is absolutely smashing Bowen and Maddison across all of these metrics. And yet, I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing more people going with Bowen and Maddison over Saka.
Yes, they are. That's simply because they're going for this formation of, Isak plus KDB. You could equally look at a formation where you have Kane and Saka. So basically just swap the positions around. And the issue with Saka is obviously you have to sell him. His blank is coming. He plays Liverpool soon. But the next 2 are fine. I mean, Brentford are a team that is this year pretty open. So their XG conceded is bottom 10, I think, if I remember correctly. So it's definitely an attacking fixture. And then North London Derby, game week 9. Again, there's always historically been goals in that fixture. So Saka for the next 2 is a perfectly fine shout.
Yeah, I like him. I mean, he's only blanked in 2 games this season. I know he hasn't hit kind of, big numbers, but it's been a pretty steady start for him. And he's obviously overshadowed by Jesus in that big game where he got huge points. But, Odegaard's even had a brace. Martin's been doing well. But, Saka has been kind of ticking along sort of quite nicely. 11% ownership as well. He now kind of is a differential. His price has fallen a little bit as well. And unlike Bowen, the stats are just really, really encouraging. So for me, out of these 3, I would lean towards Saka. I think, and he's probably the one that I'm going to end up bringing him.
What do you think of your boy Foden? You own Foden, right?
I do own Foden. Yeah, I haven't got him on this list because he's not really being talked about too much because obviously people are going for the De Bruyne, Haaland and Cancelo kind of triple. He's all right, Foden. I don't like him on the left.
Tonight.
Sorry?
He's missing out
He's
tonight.
missing
so
out
he
tonight.
should
Good.
start.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
he should
Yeah.
start on Saturday.
Yeah, I think he's important for City still. I think his link up play with Haaland is improving. I just don't like it when he gets stuck out wide left, and what you want is for Grealish to come in and sort of really start showing that he's worth that 100 million they paid for him, because I think that would pretty much cement Foden out on the right. I think he would be ahead of Mahrez if Pep had to pick one of them. But I think as long as Foden drifts over to the left and is playing that role because he's trying different kind of players there, he's frustrating, very frustrating.
I mean, the thing with City is this season they're trying this inverted fullbacks, and some games Cancelo and Walker are both sort of inverted, and so the width is only provided by Foden and whoever's playing on the right. So that basically makes them completely useless. They're hugging the touchline the whole game. I mean, they're doing stuff for the team, but not for fantasy. So that's the issue. But Foden's a fine pick. I think if somebody wanted to go for a 1 week punt, he's going to start against Wolves. I think it's not a bad shot at all. But if you're talking longer term, I think taking fixtures into account, taking the fact that they have a blank coming up, I think then Saka or a punt for a Maddison or a Bowen maybe is better.
I'd want 3 City, whatever happens. So if I'm going for Kane and Haaland, then I probably would find a spot for Foden in there, because I'd want to have Foden, Cancelo and Haaland as the 3. If I had De Bruyne and I was looking for an 8 million, then I would go for Saka. And obviously I'd have to, because I couldn't get Foden as well. I'd have 4 City if I could, but we can't do that. Yeah. Just a quick thing on Foden. On the list of midfielders, he's 13th. Next year non-penalty penalty of 0.5, which is high, which is good. That's where you want to see your kind of 8 million. I think it's the highest of all the 8 million mids. Yeah, it is. Yeah, just about. Yeah, Saka's 0.46, for example. Forwards, then. Let's just take a quick look at this. I mean, Haaland at the top, absolutely ridiculous, top of everything. Hexyard non-penalty per 90 of 1.19, points per 90 of 12.54. Is that nearly as good as Chilwell? Maybe not quite as good as Chilwell. Just shows how many points Chilwell's got when he starts.
Yeah.
But looking at some of the other players, I mean, Isak's there are only 2 starts, but 0.78. Richarlison has come in and is doing really well. Be interesting to see what team Conte goes with the weekend now that they struggled in that last game. But 0.86 for him. Obviously, Nunes is high, but only started 2 games, but 1.04. Mitrovic, quite far down, I think. Take away the penalties, 0.5 for him. And Tony, 0.5 as well. But, I mean, these are still good numbers, right? These are still the numbers we want to see from forwards. They're not creators anymore. They're actually scoring.
Correct. I mean, we're blessed, as we've mentioned before. This year is the year of the forward again, and it's actually nice to see, right? I mean, you want forwards in your fantasy team because they play closest to the goal. So it's been good, and they're also the fact that, I mean, these are non-pen, but somebody like a Mitrovic, great at pens. Somebody like a Tony, great at pens. So you add that as well to their locker, and they're extremely good picks. And I think you couldn't go wrong with a Mitro, Haaland, and a third, whether that's Isak, whether that's Kane, whether that's Tony. There's just so many. Solanke even. I mean, Solanke missed out a few games from injury, but again, Bournemouth have a fantastic run. You don't have to start him every game, but if you want that dependable guy who can come on if City blank or if Liverpool is playing City, so you have that. So I think there's lots and lots of good options.
There is. I mean, you mentioned Kane. I mean, Kane's at 0.71, which is, anything above 0.6 is kind of like elite levels. They're going to be pretty much getting you something every game. Kane and Jesus both locked on 0.71. Jesus, I don't think has done anything wrong for my side. I think he's, he could have had more points, but he's looked really attacking in all the games that I've wanted him, in the games I've seen him play. But I'm looking at swapping him over for Kane, who's a lot more money. And again, it's another gamble, right? It's like taking out all the Liverpool players and taking out Jesus. I mean, you mentioned effective ownership. Well, Jesus' effective ownership isn't dropping that much. He's still at 70%. Is it too much of a gamble to be taking him out?
Not really. I think there will be a movement out of Jesus after this week. People are holding on for Brentford, which is, I think, the right thing to do. But after this, North London derby can be anything. It can be a 2-2, 3-3. It can be a 0-0 because Conte does well against tough teams. Then you have Liverpool, then you have the blank. So you can definitely see there's only one game in between. I think that's Southampton, where, yes, you could miss out on points, but hopefully the guy you get instead, because there's so many options, will do well as well. So I'm not really worried about losing Jesus after this week. But if you're doing it this week, then you sort of are hoping that he doesn't do anything against Brentford, which is sort of risky.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Just to look at some of the forwards kind of side by side. We did show this last week, but this is your kind of your midder price. Midder price? That's not a word. You know what I mean? Jesus, Mitrovic, Tony, and Isak. Again, they kind of all giving slightly different kind of things for us. Jesus has created the most chances, for example. He's had the most touches in the box as well. Mitrovic is the one having the most shots with 27 and the most shots in the box with 22. And then Tony's kind of somewhere in the middle of kind of everything. He can create chances. He's having shots as well. Like Mitrovic, he's got the penalties too. I mean, if you look at the stats, Isak is the one that doesn't really kind of stand out. I mean, he's having the most big chances per 90, 1.78. And his XGI non-penalty per 90 is the highest, but he's obviously only had 2 games, so it's kind of hard to judge him. And we haven't seen him alongside with Wilson.
Correct. Limited sample on Isak, but I think, for me, the most important one is XGI per 90, as long as they've had equal minutes, which they haven't. So I think with Isak, you're basically taking a leap of faith with good fixtures. So fantastic this week with Bournemouth, and then I think, again, another 2 good fixtures that he has. After that, you move him if Wilson's back, or because I think if Wilson's back and they're playing together, then Wilson will be the better pick as long as he stays fit. So it's a bit like a dilemma where you go for the fitter guy who will probably be less attacking, or you go for the Wilson who you may get injured whenever you own him. So that'll be the tricky part.
Yeah. If you had to pick 2 of these, who would you go for?
If I'm picking game week 9 onwards, it's Mitrovic and Tony, because Tony would have played Arsenal and then he starts his new run. If I'm picking this week, I'm picking Mitrovic and Isak. If I'm picking 4 weeks down the line after game week 12 blank, then it's back to Jesus and Mitrovic. So all these guys are attractive at different points in the season. You sort of just have to jump on at any point, at the right point. That's
going to be it, isn't it? That kind of switcheroo. And, we've seen people doing that with obviously premium price players in the past, late risers with his upside chasing, but it almost feels like you can do that with the mid-price forwards now, who at the start of the season were all saying we're crazily overpriced and we weren't going to get any of them and all this. And now here we are saying there's 4 options and we can't really decide which ones to go for. Absolutely. I put together a cheat sheet for this week. If you don't remember these from last season, basically I look at a combination of XGI and fixture difficulty and kind of assign a score. It's not an exact science. I'm not trying to claim this is like the best thing ever, but I think particularly for people who are on a free hit, which I think some people might be or people that are looking for to bring in players. It's a useful guide as to who the kind of stats think that are going to kind of get the most points. So Richarlison's actually top. His XGI data is really strong, and obviously Leicester are really poor. He's ahead of Kane on that as well. But Richarlison and Kane this week are looking at my logistics, are the 2 most likely players to get you points. And then it's Jesus in 3rd, so a player that I'm looking to sell. Isak in 4th, Haaland down in 5th. Wolves have looked okay defensively. Obviously it's City, and it's impossible to know how many goals they're going to score against anyone. Mopé in 6th, not a striker that we've talked about, and I don't think we should. Down in 6th, and Mitrovic in 7th. But what I was surprised by, right the way down in 20th, is Ivan Toney. And that's a combination of, an XGI, which is sort of 0.5, which is okay, but there's obviously a lot higher than that. And the fact that Arsenal was such a good sort of defensive side. So if you are free hitting this week, I don't think Toney really enters into the picture.
I mean, they've been a second best defense so far. Now, obviously, fixtures bring that. Arsenal have had a nice run in first 7 game weeks or first 6 game weeks. But I don't think this is the week. Not to say that Toney won't score. Brentford have been very exciting actually this year. So you can actually, in my predictions, in my score prediction, I've predicted Brentford to score a goal. And if they score a goal, he should be involved. But you're not predicting a brace or anything more than that, which easily Mitrovic against Forest or Isak against Bournemouth can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're picking 3 strikers on a free hit, I think you go for 2, 3, and 4. No, because that doesn't include Haaland. I think you definitely go for Kane. You definitely go for Haaland. And then it's Jesus or Isak, I think, as a...
Or Mitrovic against Forest.
It's very Mitrovic, it is, isn't it? It's really tough. I mean, if you're picking on a free hit, the 3 players that my cheat sheet suggests, so Kane, Jesus and Isak, that would be going out without Haaland and without Mitrovic. If I'm picking 3 for this week, I'm probably going Kane, Mitrovic and Haaland, I think.
See, this is why it sucks that Son is not an option.
Yeah.
Because then instead of Kane, you go Son,
Absolutely.
and then you play 2 of those. And it sucks that last year we got burnt by having Kane and not Son. And now, people are getting burnt by, Son is not an option anymore when we really want him in the structure.
Well, I mean, ideally, ideally with my team, I'd just do Salah to Son. And that would be it. But I'm having to take Jesus out to get Kane as well, who this table shows is pretty likely to get some pretty decent returns against Brentford. So
I'm under Mark's instructions to give you a hard time when it comes to your team. You're going to have to convince me why Jesus needs to be sold before Brentford
but it's
Brentford away.
It's all right when it's Mark, because he's ranked lower than me, so I can bat it back. Not with you at bloody 194k. That's not fair at all. No wonder he's missed out. Can I just say, karma from New York, Mark? This is the definition of karma. I think getting ill. Hope
Somebody mentioned that, not taking you to New York.
And, here exactly. Yeah. Hope you feel better, Mark. One table that Mark has put together, that's on his deathbed. That's a bit harsh. On his fever bed, is quite an interesting table of quality of chances per shot of this season compared to last year. So what this tells you is when a player is shooting, what are how good an area is that position basically for that player? How good a quality of chance are they actually getting? Because obviously, a player can have lots of shots, but you're not going to see McAllister featuring high on this list because all of his shots are from outside the box and have an XG of 0.01 or whatever. Last season, Cody had the best XG per shot per 90. I imagine because he didn't take many shots, and when they did, they tended to go in. But Sterling, interesting, in second, 0.23. He's second this year as well. So,
and he scored tonight.
And he scored tonight as well. So, I mean, Sterling is definitely someone under Potter that I'm going to be looking at. And I think he's someone really interesting that we can kind of move towards as well, with Salah not kind of being an option. I know it'd be difficult to go for Sterling this week, even if they had the Liverpool game, because, they're playing Liverpool. But, from when they get back, I think Sterling is going to be a really intriguing option. He misses chances. That's what he does. Right. He's a frustrating player. He misses chances. But when the quality of his chances are as high as this, I think you've got to kind of take note.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think what you overlay on top of this, which basically gets you to the XG number in the first place, is the volume as well, right? I mean, so Cody had limited volume but very good XG chances, and therefore he was up here. And then you have at the other end of it Sterling, who'll sort of be involved but get those tap-ins at City. But it remains to be seen his role at Chelsea and how he sort of keeps this up. I mean, my question to you is, tonight, it sounds like Sterling's playing the Trossard role. Now, of course, this may change if Chilwell starts or but A, can he do that? And B, is he an FPL pick if he plays a Trossard role where he's almost defending as a left wing back?
Is he definitely playing a left wing back? Because a few people have said that he's playing as a winger.
He is, when he's attacking, he's a winger. Obviously, we're not watching the game, but let's assume that it's a Trossard role.
Okay.
Would you think he's a good pick or not?
No, because I don't think you want a Sterling with any defensive duties. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised because it's Potter in how he'd play him, but I would be surprised really because I think Chelsea are struggling from an attack perspective. They haven't got a huge amount of great options that can score goals. I mean, they've got Aubameyang in, but I doubt whether he's really going to have a huge impact there. Havertz isn't really a pick. On the right, Mount's been struggling. Ziyech, Sterling's going to be their main source of goals, I think, in that side. And Trossard was always our kind of creator, so it didn't matter too much where we kind of deployed him. But if he ever deploys Sterling at left wing back, I think that's taking out a big asset for them attacking wise. I don't think Potter would do that, but you never know.
Right.
With him.
Okay, well, Joe Frere in the chat says average position suggests Sterling is the furthest forward. Okay. So take it back. I think that's what we expect, right? We expect Sterling to be there as the attacking outlet for Potter's Chelsea. I actually think Mount could be interesting as well. I mean, I'm thinking who's the gross equivalent, and that's Mount, right? I mean, on free kicks, on other set pieces, should be involved, works really hard. We'll see if Mount becomes an option again as well.
Yep, absolutely. There's a few other interesting things I picked up from this chart that Mark's put together as well. If you look at last year, you've got to go right down to 150th on the list to find Ivan Toney, which is interesting in itself, at 0.10 XG per shot non-penalty. So down to 150th. Whereas to get to 0.10 this year, you've only got to go down to 24th, which is Danny Welbeck. Right. So it seems that players that so far this season are having less good chances to score. That's not very good English, but you know what I mean. Yeah. The quality of chances from a shot is a lot lower than it was last year, which is interesting, especially when you look at someone like City, whose attack has kind of regressed. There's quite a few teams that attack has regressed in terms of XG per 90. Can you read anything into that, do you think? Is it just too early to tell?
I think it's a little too early, given that maybe the chances have been spread out initially, or I don't really know one reason that would happen. I'm trying to think, is it a case of teams generally being more attacking? So I was actually looking at this stat, which the guys at Above Average FPL talked about, which is more teams have a higher XG per match than ever before. So the top 11, 12 teams have a greater than 1.2 XG compared to other seasons where basically below 8, the teams are completely toothless. So maybe it has something to do with that. But I sort of think it's just a data anomaly at this stage.
Yeah. A few things just to keep your eye on, though. I mean, Martinelli, XG per shot per 90 of 0.08. That's really low. It was 0.15 last season, so that's halved. Bowen, 0.09. It was 0.17 last season. Right. So, again, it's halved. Son, 0.10, down from 0.19 last season. You talked about him, when Perisic... Perisic kind of eating into it. But just one interesting one is Salah. So the quality of Salah's shots he's having at 0.15 is identical to what it was last season. So it doesn't indicate that when he is shooting, he's getting the chances in the same kind of areas and he's shooting in the same way, but just not quite falling for him.
It's the volume issue, right? Yeah. Again, going back to Salah's not getting the touches in the box, so he's not having as many shots, so the volume isn't there, and which basically adds up to the fact that the XGI isn't there as a total.
Yep. I mean, his shots per 90 of 2.83 isn't bad. It's in the top 10 of midfielders, but there's a lot of players that have, more than even Carvalho per 90 is having, four shots. Rodrigo's at 4.79. Even De Bruyne is having more shots per 90 than Salah. And that's normally the main metric. Yeah. Normally he has loads of shots and converts some of them. He's not the most clinical finisher, but gets enough. Whereas, like you say, this season that's not really happening and the volume's dropped. But what the stats tell you are that if he starts having more shots and he keeps up that, that XG per shot per 90, he's getting those in those same positions, he will start hitting the heights that he did last season. So don't give up on Mo yet, I think is the basic method. Not that anyone would. Fixtures. Let's take a look at the game week fixtures ahead of game week 8. We've done our predictions. I've got them from Mark as well. Just 7 this week. We've all gone completely different on the first game. Wonderful Friday night game of Aston Villa versus Southampton. I've gone for a Villa win. You've gone for a draw. Mark's gone for a Southampton win. There you go. That sums up this game, doesn't it? Who knows who's going to win this one?
Absolutely. So I'm on the fence. But look, when I was looking at this prediction, I mean, there's some where I need to look at data and then see how can I back up my prediction. And this one, Southampton are very good this year defensively. I was really surprised. They're like top 8, I think, defensively. So it's not going to be easy. And I went for an Aston Villa goal because generally they can be more attacking at home and it's an away game for Southampton. But I think they'll give them a game. So I feel like this is going to be tight, and a 1-1 was my guess.
Yeah, I was disappointed with Southampton versus Wolves. I thought that would be a game that they could win. They restrict Wolves because they don't score many goals, and they've looked quite decent from an attacking perspective. But they lost Lavia, didn't they? And to when he just scored and things, and I think they're just going to be quite an unpredictable team. So yeah, I'm backing Villa in this one, but I wouldn't be too surprised if there was.
So reading between the lines, you're predicting a Dean Hall, then is that right?
Oh God, yeah. Basically, yeah. It's going to be a Dean assist and a new bandwagon for him, and then it'll be 4 consecutive 1 points and a red card or something like that. That's
absolutely
probably what's going to happen. Forest Fulham. You and I have both gone for a Forest win. I've gone for a 2-1. You've gone for a 3-1. Mark, bless him.
A Fulham win I've gone for.
Yeah, that's what I said, didn't I?
Oh, sorry.
I think maybe that's what I said. Sorry. You and I have both gone for a Fulham win. Mark, bless him, has gone for a Forest win of 2-1. I just think what you've got are 2 very different systems here, right? You've got a Forest team that don't really know how to play to each other's strengths, and you've got a Fulham team that know exactly how to play to Mitrovic's strength. So you could get a bit of a wild card result, and Forest could win, but my head tells me Fulham are going to win this one.
Yeah, I think we all agree there's going to be goals. No one's keeping a clean sheet, and I just think Fulham are a better attack. So that was where I went with.
What was the results last year in the Championship when Forest played Fulham? There you go. How's that for putting you on the spot? I can't imagine. If you'd known that,
kidding.
yeah. I don't know. Maybe someone could let us know in the chat.
Yeah.
Wolves City. We've all gone for a comfortable City win. I've gone for a 2-0. You've gone for a 3-0. Mark's gone for a 2-0. It's hard to see Haaland not scoring, isn't it? In that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the one thing people need to watch out for is the one fixture block that managers hate is playing Wednesday night and Saturday early kickoff. And that's what City are doing, which basically tells me that minutes will be managed. It's not about, that they've had a week's rest, so they should be all right. I think they still want to manage players. And the fact that you've played a Wednesday night, I think Saturday will be a risk. Now, Haaland should start, but I just think that people will be withdrawn earlier. So it may not be the mauling that you'd expect. So this is why I thought, they'll sort of, bring the tent down at 3-0. And that's what I went for.
Bring the tent down at 3-0. I like it. Yep. Newcastle Bournemouth. I've gone for a 2-0. You've gone for a 3-0. Mark's gone for a 2-0. Surely any other result other than a win to 0 for Newcastle is going to be a huge, huge shock.
Shock. Yeah, I agree. Unless Solanke does something and ruins all FPL managers' hearts. Because I think at this point, pretty much everyone is on at least one Newcastle defender, which is Trippier or Pope. So absolutely, I think this should be a banker clean sheet.
It's got a Solanke goal written all over it, hasn't it? For sure.
Of course it does.
He ruined my Henderson clean sheet in the last game. It's like 2-0 up Forest, absolutely cruising. And then
I had Nico Williams starting as well.
at least you got an assist from him though, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Spurs Leicester. We've all gone for a resounding Spurs win. Maybe the end of Rodgers if this happens. I've gone for a 3-0. You've gone for a 3-1. Mark gone for a 3-0 as well. I think, looking at City versus Wolves and Spurs versus Leicester, if I'm looking at ceilings of points hauls, I think this is the one that could have a huge, huge win for Spurs. I'd be more surprised by City winning 5-0 than I would be Spurs beating Leicester 5-0, for example. I know they struggled, the last night, but they should beat Leicester. Leicester are awful. They are so awful at the moment. Yeah, which is why I potentially like the Kane captain. Brentford Arsenal. I've gone for 3-1 Arsenal. So have you. Mark's gone for 2-2. We're all going for goals. 4 goals.
Yeah, there should be goals. This is how Brentford have played. They've set up, and I'm surprised Mark's not gone for more goals for Arsenal. Arsenal have been terrific attacking wise. We saw in the numbers just seen. So I'm expecting them to score 2-3. Conceding 2 again, I'm not really sure. Brentford are good, but Arsenal defense has been good as well. So we'll see.
And finally, Everton West Ham. I've gone for a West Ham win to 1. You've gone for a 1-0 Everton, interestingly enough, and Mark's gone for a 2-0. Be a really, really poor start for West Ham if they lose this game.
I was thinking. I went for a 1-1 initially, and then I was looking at West Ham's travel schedule. They're in Denmark tomorrow, and then they have to travel all the way up to Liverpool, play Everton. It's just a tough schedule, and so your away game Thursday, away game Sunday. I just think they'll be leggy. Now I'm not saying Bowen or somebody will start those games, but it just takes a toll. So I felt like it's there for the taking. Everton's defense has been much, much better. I mean, suddenly having a Cody Tarkowski, I mean, these are good defenders in the setup. I think they've also set up with the 5 at the back this year to be more solid. I think it'll be a tough game for them to score. So I went for a 1-0. I could see a 1-1 as well.
Yep. I mean, they were good defensively against Liverpool. Shane Pickford's out because he's been absolutely brilliant for them.
Yeah.
But I completely agree. The Cody and Tarkowski partnership, that was a masterstroke really by Lampard. I know they did sign Mopé, who less said about the better, but defensively with Onana as well coming in, there is a much better spine to that side, and I think ultimately they'll be okay this year. Everton, I'm not expecting them to get top 10 or anything like that, but
of course not.
I think there's worse teams in the league than Everton. I think so. I think they'll have enough to stay up. By the way, the picture behind you, is that from the same place that does my ones?
I think so. My wife ordered it, but it's the Cantona one. It should be. Look, the frame looks exactly
it does.
the same.
Yeah, the frame and the thing. Yeah, they're good those. Yeah, it's from Etsy. I think I got these ones. Apart from the Reece James one, which was done by someone who actually hand drew it for me, which was very nice of them.
Oh, lovely.
I had a message from Too Many Phils. Fulham won at Forest won at Fulham. There you go.
Ah, nice.
If you're wondering.
So 4-0 Fulham beat Forest away, and Mitro scored a brace. So that's
there you go.
five.
There you go. Yeah, very different Forest side, but you'd argue worse probably at the moment until they until they get their chemistry. Captain Matrix. Here we go. This is a bit depressing, really. Game week 8, I've got the primary candidates as Haaland versus Wolves and Kane versus Leicester. If you wanted to be differential, you could go for Mitrovic against Forest. You could go for Jesus at Brentford. But you're probably not going to go for a Son or a De Bruyne, but they're in the mix anyway. And then I think it's Haaland versus United. I guess Salah is in there as well, but I think Haaland is going to be too tempting. And then it's Haaland versus Southampton in game week 10. And then game week 11, it's interesting because you've got Haaland versus Liverpool. Or you could go for Kane, which is again why I think I'm going to get Kane, because I'm targeting those two fixtures as someone a bit different. But then in game week 12, we haven't got Haaland. Hooray! So then
Finally,
it probably comes back to Salah though, which is interesting, and people aren't going to have him. Mitrovic plays Villa at home. Maddison has Leeds. I mean, that's kind of scraping the barrel a little bit. But when you take Arsenal and City out,
it's going to be Salah.
Yeah. So do you think we're going to start? Do you think we're going to see people flocking back to Salah then in game week 12?
I think so. I mean, this is why a lot of people are looking at De Bruyne's slot. So they basically, before the blank, they switch De Bruyne to Salah in game week 12. So that's another way of looking at it, that you bin off going the Kane route and you go the De Bruyne route, and instead of captaining Kane this week, you captain Haaland this week. And then the week that you're talking about captaining Kane instead in game week 11, you go Mitrovic instead. So that's another route that you could take, basically avoiding the whole thing. And then you go KDB to Salah in game week 12, if you follow.
Yep. No, that makes complete sense. Yep. Captain data. If you're looking for looking at players over the season, you just need to look no further than Haaland. Like we've said, he's the best across all these metrics. XGI per 90 of 1.19 is the best in the league. De Bruyne is next, but if you've got De Bruyne and Haaland, why would you go for Haaland over De Bruyne? Why would you go for De Bruyne over Haaland unless you think he's not going to start? So yeah, he's the obvious choice. Looking at teams, Forest are the worst team in the league out of the teams that we're looking at. I think Palace are 20th, but Forest are 19th. They're expected to concede nearly 2 goals a game. But that isn't much worse than the likes of Leicester, Bournemouth. Those 3 teams seem to be the teams to target for your kind of strikers. So Wolves are down there. 1.09. But obviously you've got the Man City factor. But yeah, I think Mitrovic and Kane are definitely intriguing options.
Absolutely.
It's just if you're brave enough.
Haaland's broken the game. I mean, what can I say? I mean, as long as he's fit. Essentially, the conversation on captaincy every week is Haaland going to start? If he's going to start, he's going to be captain. At least that's where I see it. Last 2 game weeks, that's what it was.
I think he's almost put that to bed though, right? By not by playing the 3 games in a week and scoring 2 hat-tricks and a goal. I mean, 7 goals in that spell is crazy. And if you didn't have him, I know a few people that didn't have him for that spell because they wanted to back De Bruyne and get the certainty of the minutes. And then it was De Bruyne that ended up missing one. So yeah, very very frustrating if you went against that.
So good question from Joe. Sorry, while we're at it. So he's asking if Haaland plays 90 tonight, and I've already said this Saturday morning turnaround is really really tricky. What do you think about his minutes, and then maybe that gives more credence to captaining Kane over Haaland this week?
Yeah, I mean, I'm captaining Kane, whatever. I think if I bring in Kane, if I bring in Kane, I'm definitely going to captain. I mean, his record against Leicester as well is absolutely crazy. It's the team he most loves to play against, and I know you could argue that kind of stat means absolutely nothing, but Kane is very much he strikes me as someone who likes these records, and and it just gives him that little bit of extra lift when he plays against kind of some of these sides, because he ups his game in the North London derby. He ups his game against Leicester as well. We seem to score. So I'm expecting big things. But yeah, I think I wouldn't let it put me off. If I was set on Haaland and I thought Haaland was the best captain option, I wouldn't let his minutes tonight put me off, I think. Okay. Because we've seen him play multiple games over a period and over a short period. And he's had a rest now as well. And I think it's almost certain that he starts that game against Wolves. And he's only going to be taken off there if they're a couple ahead. And he probably scored them all if they've done that. So
that's right. I mean, he's basically, instead of thinking of Haaland's minutes, we should be thinking of Haaland will play until they're 2-0 up or 2-1 up or 3-1 up.
Yeah.
And then he'll come off. And if they're losing, he'll play 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And he'll get a goal.
Yeah. So you wouldn't worry about it either? if he plays 90.
I would captain Haaland, yes.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Pras, this might be our first episode that isn't 2 hours. Very excited.
Yeah. Aren't we all glad? My wife is particularly glad because this is my third podcast. Well, it's my second of the 3 this week, so she will be glad it's not 2 hours.
Yes, well, we'll try and cut it down for your wife. Obviously, we've talked about a lot of the stuff already, so the fact we're even at 1 hour 20 just shows how bloody long these things go on for. Thanks everyone for watching, by the way, so far 980 watching. We're going to go into our teams in just a second, but if you could give us a like, and that'd be amazing, and do make sure you're subscribed to the channel as we head towards 30,000 subs, which is our target between now and the end of the season. That'd be amazing. Right, let's talk teams then. Let's look at your team first. So this is your team as it's set up at the moment. It's Ramsdale in goal, Trent, Cancelo, Trippier, Williams, Pereira, Salah, Martinelli, the lesser spotted Plange up top with Haaland.
He's the best 4.5.
Yeah, he's red flag. Is he not there anymore? Is he? Has he gone off on
He's
loan?
not there, but he didn't drop in price.
Beautiful.
Whereas Archer, Greenwood dropped in price. So he's the best by far.
Who would have thought? And then you've got Walker, Diaz, and Gross on your bench. So I'm guessing you've got 2 free transfers with this.
Yes, the team looks ugly, but I'm going to talk about what are the options. So look, I had an option to Wildcard, which is obviously there, but the thing is, with 3 transfers, I can pretty much match a Wildcard team. So it is a hit, but it is, I just feel like the information over the international break, and there's other aspects to Gameweek 9 Wildcard which are better for me, and we'll talk about that on Burning Questions tomorrow, Gameweek 9 versus Gameweek 8. So I've come to the conclusion that Gameweek 9 is my window to Wildcard, not 8. And so therefore I have 3 transfers that I can make. So I have option number 1. I can go Salah to Son. Mm-hmm. I can go Plange to Mitrovic, and I can go TAA to Perisic. So basically 2 guys playing Leicester and Mitrovic. So basically you're sort of well stocked. You have 11 players and you captain Haaland and you're good. The second option is I can go Plange to Mitrovic, I can go Salah to De Bruyne, and I can go Walker down to Botman or something. So double Newcastle defense, I have a KDB and I have Mitrovic. And the third option is another interesting one where I can go Plange to Kane, Salah to Kulusevski, and Trent to Perisic. So triple Tottenham.
Oh, that's a wild one.
I mean, you're dead ending, so you're sort of going wild to whatever you can afford. So this is what I'm thinking. It's going to be 3 moves involving Salah out, Trent out, and Plange, and then I'll get somebody instead. And the idea is then I'll wildcard, I'll get Trent back, I'll get Salah back, and I'll have these 2, nice differentials that nobody else owns. And then I'll sort of fill it up with the Chelsea guys, which people have dropped this week. So Game Week 9 is a separate conversation, but that's basically where I'm going.
It's interesting because I look at that team and I think, God, that needs a wild card. You've got Plange in there, you've got Trent and Salah, you've got Gross on the bench, you've got Walker with a flag. But you're right, with 3 transfers for 1 week, you can kind of sort out. I really like this idea of dead ending the team just for like 1 specific week. I guess the issue with the Spurs boys is that Perisic and Kulusevski both not start.
Correct. That's the issue. So this is why the safest move, which is what I'm leaning towards now, is Botman for Walker, KDB for Salah, and Mitrovic. So basically, I'm matching the wildcard teams that have Pope and Trippier because I have Botman and Trippier. I have I have Cancelo. So I feel like I'm not missing anything. Instead of Isak, I have a Jesus who I don't mind having this week. I have Ramsdale in goal. So I'm very happy with the team this week. I see no need, unless there's a major injury between now and Friday night, which would make me trigger it. But I think other than that, I'm happy with this team this week.
No, nice. Very good. This is your wildcard team that you sent me as well. Obviously, you're not pulling the trigger. You've said you can play over the international break. But if you were wildcarding this week, this is the kind of team you would do. It's Pope in goal with James, Cancelo and Trippier. Then Martinelli, Maddison, De Bruyne, Bowen. You're a Maddison and Bowen double upper. And then Mitrovic, Haaland and Isak. So you would go with Isak then if you were wildcarding this week?
If I was wildcarding this week, I would, simply because in this particular draft, I've got 0.7 in the bank, so I can go De Bruyne to Salah immediately. Now, you don't have to go immediately, but I think just having that optionality will make me sleep better at night. So if I was wildcarding, I would know that I can get to Salah in 1 move. That makes a difference. And then what I've done in this draft is midfielders where I've spent the money. So in addition to De Bruyne and Martinelli, Maddison and Bowen are the 2 8.0-ish mids. I would prefer Zaha any day. But the problem is Zaha is blanking this week and he's playing Chelsea next week. So the idea is you take a punt on these 2 guys, whichever one works out that's the one you go with, because these are the guys who have a fixture in game week 8 and they have very, very good fixtures. I mean, look at Maddison's fixtures after game week 8. I mean, they're absolutely ridiculous. Forest, Bournemouth. Take a punt. If it doesn't work out, I think there's enough options in the 8 million bracket for you to jump on or off. You can put the money back in defense if Chilwell is starting or not. So I think this is a draft which is sort of flexible. My one warning to game week 8 wildcarders is don't overcommit on transfers. So like I've just mentioned, if I go Bowen to Zaha in 2 weeks, if I'm going De Bruyne to Salah in 1 week, I'm sort of booking in transfers every single week. That's the danger. So I haven't given it as much thought as people who are actually on a wildcard are. Do give it a thought. Don't just sort of say, game week 9, this is what I'm doing, 10, this is what I'm doing, because things change. Things happen, and you won't be able to do that, and you'll be stuck in game week 12 without Trent, without Salah, and essentially needing another wild card, which you won't get.
Yeah, I think that basically answers my question about this team, which is the flexibility and the transfers. Because I look at Maddison, Bowen, and Isak and think, crap, that's 3 players that you could want to run away from sort of fairly quickly. And then you haven't got any Liverpool players, so then you might want to move De Bruyne out or get in Trent, like you mentioned. And when the idea of a wild card is to put you ahead of the curve, a team like this always runs the risk of putting you behind the curve as you kind of scramble to get back the players. But it's like we said at the start, it's a really tricky balance, the wild card this week, because you've got to really attack this week anyway. But then a lot of the players that you might want, you can't have, because like we've said, Zaha is perfect example, but you're probably not going to go for him this week because he hasn't got the game. Tricky one.
Correct. And this is my reason for dead ending this week, where then I can, with a fresh perspective, look at all the players in game week 9 and then pick the right ones. And if Maddison happens to be that one and Bowen happens to be that, fair enough. At least I've considered Zaha and others that you couldn't consider this week.
Yep, absolutely. My team, go on then, you can get your... bear in mind, just before we do that, just bear in mind, no Jesus in this team. So if I'm selling Jesus, then you can't be that mad, because you don't have him on your wildcard side.
True.
My team is Henderson in goal, Diaz, Trippier, and Emerson. I don't wish an injury on any player. Don't get me wrong, but if Criswell could just stub his toe or something and just stay out of one more match, that would be great. Pereira, Salah, Martinelli, and Foden, Haaland, Jesus, and Mitrovic, and then I've got Ward, Trent, Gross, and Estupinian on the bench. So my thoughts are, I've got 2 free transfers, I can get a team out I can get 11 out fairly comfortably. Right. Emerson is obviously a doubt, but I don't really care too much if he doesn't play. It's not really the end of the world. What I'm leaning towards doing is Salah and Jesus out for Saka and Kane, and giving Kane the armband.
Yep, I hear you. See, the problem is, your weak areas in the team are the 2 Brighton guys.
Yep.
And they will sort of rot in the team. And there's no clear exit route. So,
well, there is. There is a clear exit route, because if I do Salah and Jesus to Saka and Kane, that gives me nearly, I think, like 1.6 million to upgrade Gross, and then I'd be able to get Sinistera, who's the player that I really want for next week.
Okay. Fair enough. Other things, so you won't have a Chelsea defender going into next week. So Chelsea are highest for clean sheet odds next 3 weeks after this week. James will play right wing back or right defense. So that's one thing that sort of sticks out as missing. You'll be stuck with 5 players who are blanking in game week 12. This is not to nitpick, by the way. I'm just sort of
It sounds a lot like nitpicking, Pras.
Haaland has just scored, by the way. Haaland has just scored. Water is wet.
There you go.
So those are my concerns. That basically, while you should be moving away from Arsenal players, you're getting a Arsenal player this week who will be a problem down the line.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I would almost say, instead of Saka, maybe consider Maddison. You love him. You have history with him. You won't have to worry about him for the rest of sort of the, even until game week 13, 14. That's an option. You could look at Gross down to a cheaper mid now. But look, I don't hate the Kane cap shout at all. Haaland looks like he's played 90 minutes. I think if he ends up playing a 55-minute cameo, you're laughing, right?
Yeah, I think you're probably right about Saka. Maybe that is booking myself in the transfer ahead of game week 12, and they've got rough games. It's just, I guess Saka could become Diaz as well, and that would give me that kind of Liverpool coverage. I mean, if I wanted to get James, for example, I would have enough money to do a Stupinan up to James rather than dealing with Gross. So I can deal with one of those two issues in a good way. I can do Gross up to Sinisterra who I want, or Estupiñán up to James ahead, ahead of a good run. And I don't think the rest of my team, there's too many bad options. Because
Diaz can become James too, by the way. Diaz can become James because City play Liverpool and then blank. So you could just say, I'll go James instead at some point.
Yeah.
But going Saka is basically you are booking in the thing we talked about not doing on the wildcard. You're sort of doing without the wildcard, where if you went Saka, you're booking in the transfer. If you went somewhere else, you wouldn't have to. But yeah, I think
it's just I guess the question is, does Saka outscore Bowen and Maddison by 4 points leading up to that thing? Because then even if I have to take Saka out for a hit, it's still been kind of worth it. And I think if Saka didn't score against Brentford, I'd be worried because then he goes into Spurs and the kind of the tougher games. But I think there's Leeds, isn't there? Blank. There is Leeds before that blank.
In the middle. So Spurs, Leeds, Liverpool blank.
Yeah. Okay. So I could sell him before that Liverpool game, for example, and kind of work out. I don't know. It's up in the air. I just look at those stats about Bowen. And I just look at Leicester and think how they're playing. And I just, do I want to put one of those guys in my team? I look at Arsenal, I think their attack is so vibrant as well. And I don't really want to lose one of them before Brentford. But it's the only way I can get Kane. I'm not going to sell Mitrovic or Haaland because I think they're the two standouts. So yeah, interesting. It's an interesting week. I mean, there's been quite a lot of talk about, engaged managers, whether people are losing a bit of engagement and stuff. And I've got to admit, I've struggled this week with it because we've had the postponements. It's hard to plan. It's all this kind of stuff. But now I'm here talking to you, Pras, and I'm looking at teams and we're talking about different options. It's getting the juices flowing again.
Yeah. No, look, I mean, to be fair, it's been tough on people who played their wildcard. I mean, you couldn't have foreseen this situation. It couldn't have gone worse for people like yourselves who'd wildcarded in Brighton and Liverpool players. It's been tough. So I feel for teams like yourselves. I would say people who are listening, who are in a position like this, I mean, you're actually fairly well set up.
I know, I'm lucky.
Other people may have 5 or 6 blankers. Don't free hit. I mean, that's something we haven't talked about, but you will get opportunities.
Yeah.
There's a window, game week 21 or 22, when all these games could be rescheduled when the second leg of the of the Conference League semi-final happens. Sorry, the League Cup semi-final. You could have a 20 team game week, everyone doubling. Free hit will come in handy either there or when the FA Cup quarterfinal blanks come. You'll use it. You'll find much better uses for it. So I would sort of avoid free hit as long as you can.
I completely agree. I mean, you look at the fixtures as well, like we kind of talked about. I mean, you've got Spurs and Leicester. There's big potential in there, but there's only really Kane that I'd be worried about. Not even worried about because not exactly that many people have got him. But if you're free hitting for players from Everton or West Ham or Forest v Fulham, other than Mitrovic is the only one you're going to want in that. You don't want any Villa or Southampton players in that. So, I mean, you could free hit and stack your team up with Man City, but you've probably got 2 or 3 of those anyway. You want a Newcastle defender, maybe There's not enough. There's not enough good fixtures this week to warrant the free hit. I think I'd rather just play 9.
Fair here.
Yeah. Let's take a look at my wildcard team. So I have actually gone for Bowen in it, but again, that spot is so flexible. It could be Saka, it could be Bowen, it could be Maddison. Any of them. I think they're all about the same. They've all got their pros and cons that we kind of talked about. Right. The wildcard team I put together is Pope, Trippier, Cancelo, and Saliba, Pereira, Martinelli, Bowen, Foden, Mitrovic, Kane, and Haaland. Then on the bench, Ward, Williams, James, and Zaha. So just kind of, having James and Zaha on the bench just to bring those in straight away, probably for Pereira and Saliba. I mean, Saliba could be any of the 4.5. Again, there's not a huge amount of. I mean, there is a huge amount of good 4.5 options, but not really for this week because I think there's goals across quite a lot of the games, and I put him in because I think probably quite a few people have got value in him already. If you picked him up at 4.5, 4.6, and his price is going up, you could maybe keep him. But I guess with the City news, you probably would want to lose him down to someone else. But yeah, I feel with something like this team, it gives you a decent 11 for this week. And then you've got James and Zaha to come in to get ahead of people who have got it. And you haven't got a huge amount of problems to worry about. Like there's only really Bowen to take out. I think the rest of the team is pretty well set up. Obviously there's no De Bruyne. That's the kind of the big omission that a lot of people are going for.
You have Kane though.
But Kane's there, and you've got Foden as well that can hopefully cover some of the points. So.
Yeah, I really like this way of. I mean, you could bench a Zaha or a Trent, or basically, I don't think people should be shy of doing that, just so that you can not have as many headaches going forward, because there will be a lot of headaches coming because people will need to move players around between City and Liverpool, which is not ideal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Again, I talked about this on Gianni's stream earlier, so I won't go into too much more about it. But again, it's sort of similar to yours, but also a different. I mean, the Kane sort of, is the kind of the main difference, right, between a lot of these wildcards that we kind of see.
Do you worry about double Newcastle defense? Because people are, I mean, you could pick Pope just because he's the best keeper and Trippier because he's a great pick, but Newcastle defensively haven't had the best underlying data.
No.
So that's a little bit of a worry, right?
It is, yeah. I mean, there's two ways to look at it, right? You can look at it you can look at all these players in isolation. I think Pope is the best 5 million keeper by a mile, and I think Trippier is the best 5 million defender by a mile. So should you be put off just because you don't want too many eggs in that basket? And that's one thing. I mean, the double up has never worked for me, ever.
Right.
I can't think of a single time in which the double up has actually been a success. I tried it last year with Chelsea, and they just kept conceding. James did well, but none of the others did. I've tried it with Liverpool in the past, with Trent and Robertson, and managed to dodge points from whatever's going on in there. Even the start of this season, I had both, and they just couldn't keep a clean sheet. So it is a problem, but they're both 5 million, and the fixtures are good. And I just always back Newcastle at home to keep a clean sheet. It's so strong at home. So I can see why you wouldn't, but I personally think it's probably worth it. Mark then. So this is Mark's team. He's got Raya in goal, Neco Williams, Perisic and Trippier. It's such a different team to everyone else's. And he's wildcarded. Gibbs White, why not? De Bruyne, Andreas is in there, and Martinelli. And then he's got Mitrovic, Jesus and Tony up front. So Mark's transfers, which he told me about, are he's either going to bring in Bowen or Saka for Salah, and then he's either going to bring in Kane or Haaland for Tony. I think he's still talking about selling. Yeah.
I mean, not too dissimilar to yours.
No,
I think going off Salah, a De Bruyne and Haaland double up could be really nice. I mean, his front line looks great, and he's got James, he's got Trent. It's not that bad. I mean, he's well set up after these couple of moves.
He messaged me and kind of said, although he hasn't got the wild card, this has actually worked out as good as it could do for him, because he wants to get rid of Salah anyway. He's got Gibbs White. He can get 11 out without any transfers. I mean, this is his team without making any transfers. So he's got 2 transfers, and they're kind of luxury because he can strengthen rather than having to fight fires, which a lot of people are having to do. So yeah, I mean, it would be amazing if he did end up going for, I don't know, a Saka and Kane and went another week without Haaland. Surely this is the week he buys Haaland.
I mean, he even has the luxury to get Zaha and bench him if he wanted to do that and not go Bowen or Saka. Yeah. So yeah, it's a good spot to be in.
Yeah, in fact, that's probably what I'd do if I was him. I would go for Zaha because Saka's obviously got the missing game, like we said, and I don't trust Bowen. So yeah, I think you're right. I think I would go for Zaha and use that money. Yeah, very good. Very good. His wildcard team that he put together. Raya in goal. Interesting. Perisic. He loves Perisic. Trippier and Williams. And then Pereira, De Bruyne, Bowen, Martinelli, Mitrovic, Haaland and Tony. I mean, it's pretty much his team. I mean, he's kept Tony in there. Yeah.
That's not fair, Mark.
I know. I mean, he's kept Tony in there, which makes me think maybe it will be Jesus that he loses. But I'd be surprised. I would probably lean towards keeping Jesus than over Tony. But then that's Trent, Zaha and James on his bench. So interestingly that he'd keep Trent on the wild card. I'm not seeing many people do that.
Yeah, I think Trent, Zaha, James, I mean, these are the 3 picks that will be the differential picks when I wildcard. So whoever you're benching now will be sort of a shield against the Game Week 9 wildcarders, because those 3 will definitely be in my wildcard.
Yeah. I think James and Zaha is a lovely 2 to get on the wildcard, because you just bench them and then you just bring them in next week and then you're kind of ahead. So
absolutely.
Yeah, no, I like it. It's a good team. I'm not sure about Raya though in goal. I'd definitely find the extra money to go for a Pope.
You see, it could be Guaita. From next week, Guaita is the pick, but this week obviously he doesn't have a game, so that's the issue.
Yeah. Very good. That's it. You can get back to your wife. We're at 1 hour 40.
Excellent.
Not too far off 2 hours. I thought it'd be an hour, but it kind of never is. But no, it's been great catching up, Pras.
So much to talk about.
No, I know. Never is.
No, likewise. Thank you for having me. So much to discuss. So many teams, so many players. Even though we only have 7 fixtures, there's always stuff to talk about. Yep. So, no, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You're more than welcome. Again, thanks everyone for watching. I know Champions League's been on, and thanks for all the updates on that. Good to see Haaland scoring again, as I consider not handing him the armband. What can possibly go wrong? But there won't be one next week. Next week is the international break. So we will also be taking a break. We'll be back after that. But yeah, do like the video if you haven't already. Do subscribe to the channel. This will be on Spotify at some point, and other, Google Podcasts and all that at some point. I normally leave that to Mark, but maybe I should do it because he's ill. And we finished early. Yeah, I'll do it. But yeah, thanks for watching, everyone, and we will see you very soon.
Thank you.